polis, or city-state, was the fundamental political and social unit of ancient Greece, characterized by its distinct structure, governance, and economic organization. The evolution of the polis is one of the most significant developments in ancient history, shaping the course of political thought and contributing to the foundations of Western civilization. Central to the functioning of the polis was its economic diversity, which played a pivotal role in the development of both democracy and oligarchy, the two primary forms of government that emerged within these city-states. This essay explores the economic foundations of the Greek polis, the social classes that arose as a result of this economic diversity, and the subsequent evolution of democratic and oligarchic political systems. Economic foundations of the polis. The economy of the Greek polis was diverse, based on agriculture, trade, and craftsmanship. The economic activities within a polis were essential not only for the sustenance of its citizens, but also for the development of its political and social structures. Agriculture was the backbone of the economy, with most citizens working on land, cultivating crops such as grain, olives, and grapes. The ownership of land was a crucial factor in determining a citizen's status and influence in the polis. Those who owned large estates often had the most political power, while the landless peasants or laborers, known as thetes, formed the lower class. Trade played a significant role in the prosperity of many Greek city-states, particularly those situated on the coast. Cities like Athens, Corinth, and Rhodes were prominent trading hubs, exchanging goods with other parts of the Mediterranean and beyond. These city-states benefited from their access to resources such as timber, metals, and luxury goods, which were exchanged for grain, olive oil, pottery, and wine. The influx of wealth through trade allowed these polis to build powerful fleets, develop large urban centers, and increase their political and military influence. The craftsmanship of the Greeks, particularly in pottery, sculpture, and metalworking, was also a significant economic activity. Skilled artisans produced goods that were highly valued both locally and internationally. These goods were sold at markets, contributing to the economic diversity of the polis. In cities like Athens, where the economy was highly developed, the production of fine pottery, painted vases, and sculptures became synonymous with Greek cultural identity. Despite the prominence of agriculture, trade, and craftsmanship, the economic foundations of the Greek polis were marked by significant inequality. Wealth was concentrated in the hands of a few aristocratic families, while the majority of the population, composed of small farmers, artisans, and laborers, had little economic power. This inequality contributed to the political struggles that would shape the evolution of Greek governance. Social classes and economic inequality. The social structure of the Greek polis was deeply influenced by economic factors, and the division of wealth played a key role in the development of political systems. At the top of the social hierarchy were the aristocrats, who were typically wealthy landowners or successful merchants and craftsmen. These individuals held political power and influence, often serving as magistrates, generals, or members of the ruling councils. The aristocratic class was defined by its hereditary status, and political participation was largely restricted to them. They had the resources and the leisure time to engage in political and cultural life, shaping the identity of the polis through patronage, leadership, and cultural contributions. Beneath the aristocrats were the middle classes, who were often small landowners, merchants, and skilled artisans. These individuals were economically stable, but did not have the same level of wealth or political power as the aristocrats. In some city-states, such as Athens, the middle class played an important role in the development of democratic institutions. The prosperity of the middle class allowed them to participate more actively in civic life, and eventually pushed for greater political rights and representation. At the bottom of the social hierarchy were the thetes and slaves. The thetes were landless laborers who worked for wages, often in agriculture or as rowers in the navy. While they were free citizens, they had little political influence and were excluded from many aspects of civic life. Slavery, meanwhile, was a widespread institution in Greek society. Slaves worked in homes, on farms, in mines, and in workshops, and they had no political rights. The existence of slavery highlighted the stark divisions in wealth and power within the polis. The economic inequality between the aristocrats, middle class, and lower classes was a key factor in the evolution of political systems within the Greek polis. As the middle class grew in wealth and influence, they began to demand greater political representation. This push for reform was particularly evident in Athens, where the economic shift towards a more diverse economy played a role in the rise of democracy. The evolution of democracy. The development of democracy in the Greek polis, particularly in Athens, is one of the most well-known and significant political developments in history. Democracy, in the Athenian sense, was a system of direct participation where all free male citizens could participate in political decision-making. The economic diversity of Athens, driven by trade, industry, and an expanding middle class, contributed to the emergence of democratic institutions. In the early stages of Athenian history, political power was concentrated in the hands of a small aristocratic elite. However, by the 6th century BCE, economic changes began to erode the power of the aristocracy. The rise of the merchant and artisan classes, along with the expansion of trade and the development of naval power, gave greater influence to the non-aristocratic citizens. The economic prosperity of these groups gave them the financial independence to challenge the existing political order and demand a greater voice in governance. Key reforms in Athens, particularly those implemented by Solon circa 594 BCE, laid the groundwork for the development of democracy. Solon's reforms addressed the economic inequality in Athens by canceling debts, redistributing land, and allowing greater participation in the political process. These reforms helped to weaken the power of the aristocracy and provided a foundation for the rise of a more inclusive political system. Further democratic reforms were introduced by Cleisthenes in 508 BCE, who restructured the political organization of Athens into 10 tribes, each representing a cross-section of the population. This allowed for a more democratic participation in the assembly, where citizens could debate and vote on policies. The economic power of the middle class was essential in supporting these reforms, as their growing wealth and influence allowed them to challenge the old aristocratic order. The development of democracy in Athens was also supported by its imperial power. The wealth generated from Athens' leadership of the Delian League, a coalition of Greek city-states formed to defend against Persian aggression, allowed Athens to build a strong naval fleet, which provided both security and economic benefits. The wealth and resources from the Delian League were used to fund public works, pay for civic participation, and support the growing power of the middle class. This economic foundation helped to solidify the democratic system in Athens, allowing more citizens to participate in political life. The rise of oligarchy. While democracy flourished in Athens, other Greek city-states such as Sparta and Corinth developed oligarchic systems of government. Oligarchy, meaning rule by a few, was typically characterized by the concentration of political power in the hands of a small group of wealthy individuals or aristocrats. In many city-states, oligarchy emerged as a response to the economic inequality and social unrest that accompanied the rise of democracy. In Sparta, for example, the government was an oligarchy with a dual kingship and a council of elders, the Gerousia, which was made up of aristocrats. The Spartans were known for their militaristic society and the concentration of power in the hands of a few elite families. The Spartan economy was based on the labor of helots, a class of serfs who worked the land, and the wealth of the elite was built on this exploitation. In Corinth, an oligarchic system emerged after the tyranny of Cypselus in the 7th century BCE. The ruling elite in Corinth maintained control over the polis through their wealth derived from trade and manufacturing. Corinth was a major trading center, and the economic prosperity of the city allowed the oligarchic families to maintain their dominance. While oligarchy was a common form of government in many Greek city-states, it was often less inclusive and more resistant to reforms than democracy. The oligarchic elites often sought to maintain their privileges by limiting the political rights of the lower classes and restricting access to power. As a result, oligarchy often led to tensions between the ruling elite and the lower classes, which sometimes resulted in popular uprisings or the rise of tyranny. Conclusion. The Greek polis was a complex and dynamic social and political entity, shaped by its economic diversity. The economy, based on agriculture, trade, and craftsmanship, provided the foundation for the social stratification that gave rise to both democracy and oligarchy. In cities like Athens, economic prosperity and the rise of the middle class helped to drive the development of democratic institutions, allowing for greater political participation and equality among citizens. In contrast, other city-states, such as Sparta and Corinth, developed oligarchic systems where political power remained concentrated in the hands of a few wealthy elites. The evolution of democracy and oligarchy in the Greek polis was deeply intertwined with the economic forces that shaped the lives of its citizens, and this interplay continues to be a key point of study in the history of political systems.